Right now, the Bernoulli distribution, as we talked about, is the distribution of a random variable that we get by assigning by thinking about tossing a coin, a p coin, one time, and assigning the probability 1 or the value 1 if the coin comes up heads, 0 if it comes up tails, and little p is the probability of tossing heads. Binomial distribution is thinking about doing that n times. So n is an integer, and p is between 0 and 1. We think about having n independent Bernoulli trials, and we count how many heads there were. So in this case, the sample space is n-fold product of heads and tails. And p is the probability associated to the sum. Well, no, p is the probability associated to n independent Bernoulli trials with parameter p. And the random variable x, so x is defined as x1 plus xn, where xi are what are called IID Bernoulli p. What we mean by that is that xi are assumed to be independent and identically distributed, meaning they have the same distribution, and that distribution is the Bernoulli p distribution. But in this case, so just to be explicit, then x has the binomial distribution with n trials and success probability p. And we write that as x is distributed as binomial np. Okay, so how do we calculate mean and variance in this case? Well, expectation of x, by definition, x is the sum of n IID Bernoulli p's. We know that the expectation of a sum is the sum of expectations. So each of these components has the same expectation. It's all p. So it's p plus p plus p plus p, etc., n times, which is, of course, n times p. And the variance of x, this is the variance of the sum of the x's. And we talked previously that the variance of a sum is sum of the variances plus sum of the pairwise covariances. But because of independence, this is actually just the sum of the variances, right? Because we assumed independence, covariances are 0. So these variances are all the same. There's n of them. And as we saw above, these are Bernoulli's. Their variance is p times 1 minus p. So the variance of the binomial is n times p times 1 minus p. So that's the binomial distribution. It's the distribution of the sum of n independent Bernoulli trials.